I cut my hair on a Wednesday. Not a trim, not a refresh. I walked into a salon I had never been to, sat down in the chair and said, "Cut it all off." The woman holding the scissors looked at me in the mirror and said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." That was 6 months ago, and it was the first decision I had made purely for myself in 14 years. My name is Claire Ann Whitfield, maiden name Hargrove. I kept Whitfield after the divorce because by that point it was my children's name and I was done losing things. I am 42 years old, born in Nashville, Tennessee, 1982. The year E.T. came out, which my mother said meant I had always been looking for something from somewhere else. My mother has a gift for making everything about longing. I am the daughter of Robert and Margaret Hargrove. Daddy is a retired accountant who golfs 5 days a week and has achieved a kind of contentment I find both admirable and slightly suspicious. Mama is a woman who could have been many things and chose to be a wife, and I spent 20 years judging her for it and the last 5 understanding her. I have one older brother, Thomas, who lives in Denver, does something in finance, and texts me on birthdays with the enthusiasm of a man completing an obligation. We love each other in the way of people who grew up in the same house and became completely different people. I am a mother. 2 kids, Sophie, 14, who is the most terrifyingly self-possessed human being I have ever encountered, and I take full credit, and Ben, 11, who still hugs me like he means it, and I am holding on to that with both hands. I am divorced. 2 years now. 12 years of marriage to a man named David, who was not a bad person. I want to say that because the story is too easy if he's a villain. David was not a villain. David was just someone I slowly disappeared inside of. And one day I looked in the mirror and I could not find myself, and I thought, this is no one's fault, and it cannot continue. And I am a graphic designer, freelance now. For 8 years I worked at a firm downtown, and was good at it, and kept myself small inside it, because small felt safe. 2 years ago, I went out on my own, and it was the second bravest thing I have ever done. The hair was the first. I want to talk about what happens to women in their 30s. Not all women. I can only speak for myself and the women I know closely enough to see behind the performance. But here is what I watched happen to me and to most of my friends over the course of a decade. We got capable, incredibly, impressively, exhaustingly capable. We ran households and careers and school schedules and social calendars. We remembered everyone's allergies and everyone's appointments and everyone's preferences. We became the person in every room who held the information, who held the plan, who held it all together. And somewhere in the process of becoming so capable, we stopped being desirable to ourselves. Not to other people necessarily, but to ourselves. I stopped seeing myself as a woman who wanted things. I became a woman who managed things, and those are not the same. David and I got married when I was 28. He was 31. We were in love, genuinely, warmly in love. The early years were good. He made me laugh. I made him feel grounded. We built something together. But marriage has a way of sorting people into roles if you're not careful. And we were not careful. I became the organizer, the planner, the one who remembered that Sophie had a dentist appointment and Ben needed new cleats and the car registration was due. I became the emotional center of the household, the one everyone came to, the one who processed everyone's feelings, the one who made sure everyone was okay. David was not a bad husband. He worked hard. He was present. He loved the kids. But he loved me the way you love furniture you really like. Appreciatively, comfortably, without urgency. And I let that happen. I want to be honest about that. I participated in my own disappearance because I was raised to believe that a good woman was a giving woman. That love was demonstrated through service. That putting yourself first was the same as being selfish, and selfish was the worst thing you could be. So I gave, and gave, and gave. Until one evening, Sophie was 9, Ben was 6. I was sitting on the bathroom floor at 11 p.m. after getting both kids to bed and finishing a work deadline and cleaning the kitchen, and I thought, I am so tired. And underneath the tired was something else, something I hadn't let myself feel in years. I am invisible. The divorce was quiet. That surprised people. They expected drama. Screaming accusations, lawyers at dawn. But David and I sat at the kitchen table one Sunday morning after the kids had gone to a birthday party, and I said, I don't think we're good for each other anymore. I don't think I'm good for myself inside this. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I know. 2 words. I know. 12 years, and that was what was true. We cried. We were kind to each other. We decided together how to tell the children and how to divide the life we'd built and how to remain decent in the aftermath. And it was still one of the hardest things I have ever done. Because even a marriage you need to leave is a life you have to grieve. The first year after was about survival. I will not romanticize it. I will not tell you that divorce is empowering and I found myself and everything was golden. The first year was hard and lonely and full of moments where I questioned every decision I had ever made. I was 40 years old, sleeping in what used to be the guest room because I couldn't face the bedroom yet, sharing custody of my children every other week, which means I spent every other week in a house that was too quiet in ways that felt personal. The empty weeks broke me open because when the children were with David, there was no one to manage, no one to organize for, no one who needed me. And I had structured my entire identity around being needed. Without it, I didn't know what shape I was. I watched a lot of television I'm not proud of. I ate pasta standing over the sink at 10 p.m. I called my friend Rachel at 2 a.m. twice, and Rachel answered both times, which is the definition of a real friend. And slowly, something started to happen in the quiet. I started to hear myself again. It started small. I signed up for a painting class, not because I thought I was talented. I knew I wasn't, but because when I was 19, I used to paint for hours in my dorm room, and something about colour and canvas made me feel like myself, and I had put it away with so many other things when real life started. First class, I was terrible. The instructor, a 60-year-old Italian man named Marco, who had no filter and absolute conviction, looked at my canvas and said, "You are painting what you think it should look like. Paint what you feel." I said, "I don't know what I feel." He said, "Then that is where we begin." I cried on the drive home. Not sad crying. The other kind. The kind that happens when something true gets said out loud. I want to talk about a woman's body at 42 because nobody tells you the truth about it and the lies are doing real damage. The culture tells you that 42 is the beginning of the end, that your body is something to be managed, corrected, maintained against decline. The beauty industry has an entire economy built on the premise that aging is a problem to be solved. I bought into it. Of course I did. I am a woman in America. For years I looked at myself in the mirror and catalogued what was wrong, the places that had changed after 2 pregnancies, the lines that had appeared without permission, the ways my body was different at 42 than it was at 25. And I spent so much time mourning the 25-year-old body that I never appreciated the 42-year-old one. Here is what I know now that I didn't know then. This body carried 2 human beings. This body has worked and moved and held and healed. This body has walked through grief and come out the other side. This body knows things the 25-year-old version had not yet learned. The lines on my face are not damage. They are record. I am not declining. I am deepening. It took me 42 years and a bathroom mirror and a lot of therapy to be able to say that and mean it. My therapist is a woman named Dr. Susan Park, 50-something, Korean-American, calm in the way of someone who has heard everything and is surprised by nothing. She has this quality of making you feel like whatever you're about to say is not only acceptable, but expected, like she's already made room for it. 4 months into our sessions, she asked me something that rearranged my thinking. She said, "Claire, what do you find attractive about yourself?" I laughed. I actually laughed because the question felt absurd. She waited. I said, "I don't really think about myself that way." She said, "I know. That's the problem." She wasn't talking about vanity. She was talking about self-regard, about the basic human capacity to look at yourself and see something worth seeing, to find yourself interesting, worthy, alive. I had outsourced that capacity entirely to other people. I needed David to find me attractive so I could feel attractive. I needed my colleagues to find me talented so I could feel talented. I needed my children to need me so I could feel necessary. I had no internal source. Dr. Park said, "What would it mean to be the one who decides your worth?" I sat with that question for 3 weeks. The hair. I need to come back to the hair because it sounds small and it was enormous. I had worn my hair the same way for 10 years. Long, usually pulled back, practical. David liked it long. My mother liked it long. Long was safe and expected and required no explanation. The morning I cut it, I woke up at 6 a.m. on a Wednesday with a feeling I can only describe as urgency, like something in me had been waiting for permission and finally stopped waiting. I dropped the kids at school, drove to a salon called Aria on the east side of town. I had never been there. I just drove past it once and thought it looked like a place for someone braver than me, and I walked in. The woman who cut it was named Danny, 30 years old, tattoos on both arms, absolutely no tolerance for uncertainty. She said, "What do we want today?" I said, "I want to look like myself." She studied me for a moment. Then she said, "Short then, textured, something with some edge to it." I said, "Yes." She cut for 40 minutes. I didn't look in the mirror until she was done. When I looked, I did not recognize myself. And then I did. That was the face I had been looking for. That was the woman I had been before I started making myself smaller. Older now, yes. Lined and knowing and complicated, but present. Fully, completely present. I tipped Danny $100. She said, "Happens about once a month. Woman comes in, knows something is about to change. I just make room for it." Sophie saw me when I picked her up from school that afternoon. She stopped on the steps, looked at me, and then she smiled. This slow, enormous smile. And she said, "Mom, you look like you." 14 years old, and she already understood something that took me 42 years. I held it together until I got in the car. Then I let myself feel it. I want to talk about desire, not just physical desire, though that is part of this, and I refuse to pretend otherwise. I mean desire in the largest sense. Wanting, reaching, the feeling of being alive enough to want things. I had turned it off. Gradually, over years, I had turned down the volume on my own wanting until it was nearly inaudible. Because wanting felt dangerous. Wanting meant you could be disappointed. Wanting meant you were admitting that what you had wasn't enough. And admitting that felt like ingratitude, and ingratitude felt like failure. So I managed. I maintained. I was grateful for what was there, and I stopped reaching for what wasn't. At 42, I am reaching again. I want to travel alone. I have never traveled alone. I have traveled with David, with the kids, with Rachel, but alone. Just me. A bag, a city I've never seen. I have never done that, and I want to do it more than I can say. I want to keep painting, even badly, even imperfectly, because Marco was right. When I stop thinking about what it should look like and start feeling what it is, something happens on the canvas that surprises me, and I am not done being surprised. I want to be in a relationship again someday. A real one. One where I walk in knowing who I am and what I need, and I don't disappear into it. One where I am chosen and choosing in equal measure. One where I say, this is who I am. Take it wholly or not at all. I want to look in the mirror every morning and see someone I recognize. I am getting there. There is a version of this story that ends with a grand romantic gesture. New man, new beginning, love at 42, curtain falls. That is not this story. This story ends quieter than that, and I think it is more honest. It ends on a Tuesday evening in October. Sophie is at her father's. Ben is at his friend's house for a sleepover. I am alone in my apartment. My apartment, the one I chose and furnished and made into something that looks like me, and I am painting. Music on, glass of wine, painting something that doesn't look like anything recognizable and feels exactly right. And I am happy, not performing happy, not managing happy, not grateful I should be happy, actually, quietly, fully happy. I stop and I look around the room, at the canvases leaning against the wall, at the books I've been meaning to read stacked on the coffee table, at the photograph of Sophie and Ben on the shelf that makes me feel like I did something right, and I think, this is mine, this life, this room. This woman standing in it, mine. I spent 42 years waiting for someone to tell me I was enough. I am done waiting. I am telling myself, you are enough. You are more than enough. You are a woman in the middle of her life with dirt on her hands from all the growing and light coming in from every direction if you just turn toward it. You are not too old. You are not too much. You are not too complicated. You are not past your best days. You are 42 years old, and you are just now beginning to understand the assignment, and the assignment is this: be here, be all the way here, in your body, in your life, in your wanting. Don't manage your existence, live it. Take up the space you were given, speak in your actual voice, love the face in the mirror. Not despite the years on it, but because of them. Because of every single one of them. Cut your hair if you want to cut your hair. Paint the thing that has no name. Travel alone to the city you've always wanted to see. And do not Do not make yourself smaller to fit inside someone else's idea of who you should be. You are not a supporting character. You are the whole story. Sophie asked me last week what I want to be when I grow up. She was joking, mostly. I thought about it seriously. I said, I want to be this. What I'm becoming right now. I want to be a woman who knows herself and isn't afraid of that. She looked at me for a moment, then she said, good. Because that version of you is my favorite. 14 years old, teaching me things I should have known at her age. Maybe that's how it works. Maybe we teach our daughters by becoming who we should have been all along. Maybe that is enough. Maybe that is everything. The painting is still wet on the canvas. I'm not done yet. I don't think I'm supposed to be.